Quality over quantity. Which matters more? Personally, I choose quality when it comes to my shirts.
And quantity when it comes to my Halloween candy.
But it's not always this easy. We're constantly making this compromise every day of our lives. Is it worth buying a 4-pack of cheap t-shirts over one well-made fair trade shirt? Should I invest in a single juicy ribeye or cram 6 flank steaks until they get lodged right in this region here? And what about when it comes to outreach for your business? Is it better to risk getting thrown into spam jail by sending 100 templated emails? Or put all your precious link-building eggs into one well-researched, personalized email basket? Today on Marketing is Broken, we finally get answers to life's toughest questions. Panico, Chief Growth Officer at Buzzstream, will settle your fears and my stomach by sharing his best tips for outstanding outreach. The quality versus quantity struggle is alive and well in online marketing. It takes real, time-consuming work to do thoughtful, personalized outreach. A lot more work than it takes to spray and pray, as the charming phrase goes. If you've worked in marketing for longer than 5 minutes, then you've gotten one of those emails. You know the ones. Dear Josh, I was recently reading your great article, and then they just paste in the main URL of your blog, and really enjoyed it. Typo. I think a link to our related work, and then they just paste in the URL of a truly terrible, truly irrelevant blog, would benefit us both. Deleted. Putting aside my personal feelings on the matter, I got curious. Do emails like this actually work? They must. Otherwise, why are marketers still sending them? And if these offensively bad emails actually produce results, how does their ROI compare to the results of truly personalized outreach? Before you resign yourself to hours of LinkedIn research every week, listen to what my guest, Panico, has to say. Steven is the Chief Growth Officer at Buzzstream, where they build software that helps you build relationships. Spam not included. When it comes to outreach, how personal is personal enough?
So that's a good question. And really, I think that you take a step back and you kind of think about the reasons that people generally personalize. Most often they are thinking of it in terms of rapport building. And that can have utility, but it's also probably one of the more dangerous ways to personalize because it's very easy to come across as disingenuous when you are doing that. And truthfully, most often it is. You don't necessarily care about what's going on personally, but there are other ways that I think that people can utilize it better. And most often that's going to be to showcase knowledge of a publication or a community, or it's going to be to demonstrate relevance for your asset or you in engaging with the person. So I think that to kind of succinctly answer the question, it's personal enough when you are able to say, why are you reaching out to them versus any of the other bloggers or publications that are out there in the world, and giving a very clear answer on that question.
Perfect. Okay, that's a great tip and overall advice for people that are trying to do outreach.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to getting too personal, what kind of things should you avoid? You mentioned, not being disingenuous during this report or using this information to try and build rapport.
Yeah.
Where does it become just like too personal? What's off limits these days?
I think that I've definitely seen some egregious examples of people going too deep. You can be creepy, diving deep into the Twitter or Instagram profiles and talking about a trip that they took with their fiance several years ago. So that's obvious. I do think that the bigger issue is that disingenuous side of things, where people will they'll reach out and they're just giving this what we kind of refer to as cursory personalization. It's something along the lines of, hey, I saw you wrote X article, great point Y. And in the most egregious of these, that will then be kind of unrelated to the pitch or the content that you're promoting. So it's this weird disparity.
Kind of disconnect.
Yeah, and it just, it's one of these things where people know the game at this point. If they're any kind of influencer, or particularly if they're a journalist, they know what's going on. So you do that, and it just immediately rings, somewhat similar to when you get a call from a salesperson or something like that. It just immediately flips their mind into, okay, it's one of these,
Sure.
versus someone who's savvy and knows what's going on. And I will say that we actually see this the most with teams that have early outreach success in some campaigns, and then they're trying to scale up rapidly, and they will codify every element of personalization to the point where it just becomes very mechanical, and there's no way you can do it without seeming forced.
Like super templated.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that. And then there's another kind of just more general issue where there's some audiences that just aren't that receptive to personalization. So, a great example is journalists. They, personalization in terms of getting them relevant information, absolutely. But they just want to get the pitch. They want it quick. They want to know what the information is because they're working on tight deadlines. And again, they want to make sure that they have the right content for the day. So they're moving through these at a rapid pace. We do see some PR teams personalize their pitches to journalists, but overwhelmingly it's ones that they've already had a relationship with and are kind of piggybacking off of a past campaign success. So even then, the relationship is built off of something that's relevant and business related.
Okay. So on the back of that too, so if somebody's just getting started with outreach, and let's say, they're in your average industry, right? And that's laughable, but what's your best tip for tips for getting your outreach emails opened and then read?
Yeah.
And then take a step further, and then responded to,
Yeah, for sure. So as you said, there's so many different types of outreach, so many different industries doing it. So I'll answer it in a general way, and then I'll give you a more specific example, in one type of campaign. So generally, I'd say the very best way is to drive curiosity and avoid generic subject lines and generic content. So what you don't want to do is reach out and say, have your subject just be something like guest post for X site, guest post for your site. There's a very off chance that somebody's going to be interested in that because generally people who are going to be contributing a good guest post would never use that type of line. It works occasionally in a numbers game, but it's pretty infrequent. So driving curiosity, one of the things that we see some people in the digital PR space do very well is kind of create something of a curiosity rabbit hole where they will have their subject line read pretty much exactly like a headline and kind of have that enticing element that you would want a headline to have. Then driving into the body content of the pitch, it will be the 3 to 5 most cogent, juiciest key takeaways or data points. And then only from there do they drive into the asset. They'll have it either linked to or attached. But it kind of, at each step in the process, is just a little bit more interesting and gives a little bit more detail so that the journalists that they're reaching out to can kind of get into it at their own pace. But it's all kind of targeted for where they are in the funnel of the email sequence.
Sure. So it's kind of like an email that's written almost like an article.
A little bit, yeah. Like almost like, and I'd say the subject line as a headline it could be very one-to-one. I think of the body content as like the summary, an executive summary, just a few things, but more, like I said, a little bit more juicy and attention grabbing, and then driving into that. So yeah, it is a bit like an article, and including all of the assets is another thing. Again, this is a bit more industry specific, but if you include a lot of assets, then you can kind of reach those people, because you mentioned actually getting replies. And one of the points I was going to make is sometimes often replies are a great metric, but sometimes they're not. And, when we're talking about journalists, often if you give them everything they need, they'll just take it and run, right? Like they don't necessarily need to get back to you, and you'll only hear back from them once the coverage is placed. Right. So
that makes sense.
But yeah, I think that kind of moving them into those next actions is a great way of kind of looking at success and outreach.
That's super helpful. Stephen Panico, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Think we missed an outreach tip, or want to flood my inbox with irrelevant link building requests? Drop a comment below. Just be sure to make a count. Hey, it's Josh from Brandish Insights. Thank you for watching Marketing is Broken. If you like this week's episode, please click below to subscribe or check out other episodes. And if your company could use more insights around your branding efforts, check out brandishinsights.com.